Welcome to the Human Impact Theory podcast. I'm Jacqueline Way, founder of 365 Give, and welcome to my home today. Today, we are going to be exploring one of the most powerful and I think overlooked practices for a happy life, and you're actually going to soon learn for a meaningful life. The simple practice of gratitude. Yes, those two words your mother drilled into your head in childhood. Thank you. They mean way more than we think. And she was actually handing you the secret ingredient to lowering your stress, sleeping better, building stronger relationships, and experiencing higher levels of happiness for your whole life. So thanks, Mom. Gratitude isn't just an automatic habit your mom wanted you to do. The latest and most cited study on gratitude, led by the University of Miami, actually proves that gratitude doesn't just make you feel better, it literally changes how your brain and your body perceive the world. Think of it like putting on those rose colored heart shaped sunglasses. Gratitude gives you a different lens that you're actually going to see the world. But there is a catch. This isn't some 21-day practice that you're going to get and then you're done and you're feeling better. Gratitude is something that we interweave into our life every day for the rest of your life. Our guest today is Randy Sparks. He's the founder of the Sparks of Gratitude, along with his wife, and the host of Sparks of Gratitude podcast. And they know this deeply. Him and his wife started a gratitude journey during a season that they were having a lot of personal challenges. And it really transformed their marriage and who they are and how they show up in the world. They have now inspired thousands all over the globe, and he's here today to share his story and what he's learned. And by the time you're done with this podcast, you're going to learn a question that's going to change the way you look at your life. Why is this happening for me? But you need to get to the end to discover the answer. So listen all the way through. So whether you're preparing for Thanksgiving, the holidays are just around the corner, or you're simply wanting more happiness and meaning in your life, this is the episode for you. And why gratitude is one of the number one happiness practices that honestly, 99% of the people aren't even doing. So let's get started and move towards what can truly be a truly happy life for you. Let's get started. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode. And most of all, Randy, welcome to the Human Impact Theory. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Well, I'm honored and privileged to be here. Thanks for sharing your time with me.
Well, we're excited to dig into a practice that, I like to say, and as the title says of this episode, only 1% of people actually do. And you have a really beautiful story about this happiness practice that I would love for you to share with our audience. How did your happiness practice start?
Oh, well, I think happiness is a really loaded word, right?
Right.
What is the pursuit of happiness? And again, I think a lot of people have written books about that. I've even interviewed people. One of my guests on my podcast, what calls himself the happiness doctor, and I've read a million books on happiness. That may be kind of overstating the real number, but um, I spent a lot of time in the last, maybe 15 plus years reading and looking into that, positivity and happiness, enjoying what really makes that. I don't think I understood it very much. But I think I made incremental improvements along the way of like, oh, well,
Mm.
here's something that you can do. Just choose to smile. Just proactively smile. Just little things, maybe 20 years ago, started doing little things like that. But then as things moved on, I felt like my capacity to go deeper into what this conversation really is improved, right? I was incrementally fed until I was ready for something more deeper and more meaningful. And I think
Mm.
meaningful is the real question because I don't believe I'm in the pursuit of happiness. I believe I'm in the pursuit of meaning,
Mm.
right?
Beautiful.
Because if something is meaningful enough, if I have meaning and purpose in my life, then I'm able to endure the things which are challenging, right? If I have a strong enough meaning, and so that's where I kind of analyze the idea of happiness in itself. Well, what even is that? Is that just the absence of pain or discomfort? Because if that's the case, then where's my progress, right? And how am I willing to do the hard thing when something greater awaits me on the other side? A new, better version of me that comes through the challenge. So I think that that for me, I got to learn this in the 2000s about uncovering why meaning for me, but people long before me were having this conversation. I mean, Viktor Frankl, The Man's Search for Meaning. I mean, this is many decades ago that that this idea was coming through his mind and his experience and his pen. And and then I just eventually reach a level of maturity to decide to listen and learn from it.
Mm. Okay, before we even move on further, because you've just given me, I want to go in about 12 different directions with this, which I love, because really the title of the podcast now should be, completely and totally changed. The practices that the 1% of people do for a meaningful life. And I so agree with you. And I think this is such a important topic for people to understand. And the one thing I want to pull from this, because we know that there's a whole variety of ages that are going to listen to this today, but you said something to me that was very important. You got to a stage, an age, a point in your life where meaning became more important for you to understand. Tell me a little bit more about that. Why didn't you pick up on this in your 20s? Wouldn't it have made things easier? Or in your teens? Wouldn't the process of life been easier if you could understand meaning and purpose at that time?
It may have been, and I still think that somebody in their youth, myself included, is probably learning those things and maybe knows them, but maybe isn't aware enough to define it. But I might have been experiencing that along the way, but not aware that it was in fact that thing, right?
Mm,
And so maybe it's
absolutely.
awareness, and then with that increased awareness, then provides me the opportunity for additional intention, which creates deeper awareness. So I don't know if that specifically answers the question,
Yeah.
but
Well, I love that you said awareness. That's really the first step in this, isn't it? Is just having that awareness that we do have the ability and we can have a meaningful life when we first realize that awareness is the first step to all of this, which by the end of this, I can see we're going to have a step-by-step process to a
hmm
meaningful life. So,
right.
so I love that you said that as well. And one of the other things I really picked up on in what you said is that we're going to talk about a practice that you have incorporated into your life, into your marriage. It's become part of who you are and what you share with the world. But you spoke about the fact that you've had incremental things along the way that you keep bringing into your life as potentially different practices. The smile, for
hmm
example, that's one small thing that you knew you were able to do to bring in a little bit more happiness and connection into your life for yourself and for others with one small practice. Are there any other things that you have incrementally been aware, maybe even not aware, as you look back and as we view our lives as we get a little bit older, that you could also say that have had an effect on creating this journey and being part of your journey to understanding meaning and purpose a little more?
Yes, and maybe I'll highlight a couple specific ones that the beauty of these, I think, is the simplicity of them.
Hmm.
But then what kind of like dropping a pebble in the pond, the tiniest pebble can create a grand ripple, right? And not just a single ripple, but multiple, right? That continue to expand and expand and expand. So small things like my wife and I, early in our marriage, we've been married, 21, going on 22 years. And I remember early on, she really brought up the importance of the language we choose to use. Our words matter, right?
Mm.
And we can and so we decided, I mean, certain things that we would do is we would choose to smile, and when we see people, we would smile, right? And I would just I like reflexively I just smile all the time, right? And now I can't help it, and so these muscles are really strong because I smile all the time. Um, but then we chose like, well, what kind of language do we want to use in our home? And we said, okay, well, in our home, we're just going to choose not to curse, right? And we said, and someday we're going to bring children into this home, which we have. I have three children now, teenagers down to 11, 18 down to 11 years old. And we've just had that as a pattern of we decided not to do that because we felt, this was our decision that this would bring a low frequency energy into the home. I mean, we didn't say it like that back then. We said, well, we're going to choose to use these types of words, but then we're also going to replace certain words. For example, I'll give you a couple of instances. or examples. Um, Instead of saying, I can't remember, like, I can never remember, I'm so bad at remembering those things, we decided to practice saying, I will remember. I will remember. And the funny thing is it tricks my brain into continuing to search the file cabinet to uncover that thing that I'm actively trying to remember instead of completely closing the door and saying, I can't remember and I give up. Right. And so I've activated my capacity for that just by choosing a word. Right. And then eventually, we went through this process of saying, well, what's another thing that we want to intentionally do? And that became an intentional gratitude practice. We would choose to see gratitude. And that had a massive impact on our life.
Thank you for sharing the beginning of that process with us, because I think that's a really important thing for all of our listeners to hear today is that it doesn't always start with one thing. It doesn't start with just gratitude, for example. But I can hear in your story that you've already been layering this for a number of years. It wasn't that it just started with something. Some people think that a gratitude practice is hard to do, and difficult and to remember all of those things. But this started even more simply for you and your wife, as simple as a smile. And we love that philosophy that goes right along with what we do at 365 Give as well, is just start small, do what you can do. And that was the second step that you said is I heard that and I wrote down the words, it's not what I can't do, it's what I can do. And I love that you had learned the secret, literally, to tricking your brain into to still move it forward and not lock the door to what wasn't possible, but to what was still possible. And I hear that in the I can and I can't. And I'm sure you use that with your children as well, which is a beautiful way to grow your children. So those are two really big things that people need to understand that they can do, that they can start triggering and you can call it dopamine and you can call it your endorphins and your serotonins. You can actually start triggering those chemicals in your body. A smile does that. And the difference between the positive mindset of I can from I can't and just shutting it down and not even being able to look or see things differently. So thank you for sharing those practices. And now we're going to move into the big one, which is gratitude. Tell us about that story with you and your wife and where you started with your own gratitude practice, because this is really what you two are all about.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is this is just a simple thing. Like nothing just grand and magnificent happens. So it's a continuation of this incremental, um, purposeful, intentional movement, right? And so when this is maybe 15 years ago, and my wife and I occasionally would visit with a therapist. He's a positive psychologist named Dr. Paul Jenkins. We live in Utah, and he operated here. Now he's a coach. If you look up pathological positivity or live on purpose, this is
I
who
love
Dr.
that.
Paul Jenkins is. I encourage people to look him up because he's got a lot of great content. Um, and occasionally we'd visit with him, and anytime we were kind of struggling with something, and at this moment in time, it was struggling with parenting, right? We had some toddlers, and one of them, Penelope, I mean, she is just the most wonderful daughter. She's now, almost 17 years old, and her superpower is creativity, just out of this world creativity, and she blows my mind. Um, and I think as a toddler, she was just, she had so much going on and was incapable of expressing it and and had a hard time controlling those emotions. And so she would kind of lash out or scream and we just wondered, are we ruining our child? What do we do? Well, we were talking to him about this and he kind of talked us off our ledge. He's like, you guys are doing great. You're right on schedule. Everything's fine. Here's some tools. And then in that, he invited us to keep a daily gratitude journal. He's like,
Mm.
hey, try this. And I think it would have been an invitation whether or not we were in there with our daughter. But the fact that we had that invitation, I think two important things happened that day. He extended the invitation for us to do that. And we said, oh, sure, we'll do that. So we accepted the invitation. So this is the important part. And we
Mhm.
didn't just accept it, but we both had, a gratitude journal, maybe 6 months worth of, flip through the pages and it guides us through the process. And we both did it and we're consistent in it. And now this is simple 5 minute, 5, 10 minute daily habit that we started, Jacqueline. And we started to notice that not long into it, it started to kind of feed itself, and we were encouraging each other like we were so happy first thing in the morning to wake up and see each other just writing in this daily gratitude journal, which was so fun for us to see. Like it kind of fed the positivity moving forward. But then I started to notice that I would feel different and I would see and notice differently, right? Suddenly I was much more patient. I was much more observant, and I was much less disappointed. I, I,
Mm.
I, I didn't live in this mindset of expectations and entitlement. I started seeing good and flecks of gold in any circumstance, right? Because life still happened around me normally. Nothing changed except the way that I was seeing it. Um, Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's what we were doing, is we were choosing to see gratitude all the time. And so it was this daily gratitude practice that we would keep. Look, people have been doing this. Millions of people have written billions of daily gratitudes. We didn't come up with this. Gratitude's been around as long as life has. But this was our choice to dig deeper into it. And so that's what started. We just chose a daily gratitude practice. And then maybe 5 or 6 years ago, my wife and I went through a particularly challenging experience where I'd been working with a partner. I'm an attorney. I'm an estate planning attorney, and I love what I do. I feel like I deliver peace of mind to people, and it's fun. It matters to me. Um, and a partner and I had a partnership together, and that divided, and it was challenging. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal, but it really hurt at the time. It really did, and I was pretty down. But in the middle of that experience, while we were, emotionally suffering and so on, and um, we also would talk to each other and notice, like, look at all this wonder that's occurring around us in the middle of this moment of pain. We had trained ourselves to see it. And this was a big moment for us to start to notice that. We'd been noticing it all along, but then we went through something. We went into a dark night of the soul, a version of that, and we could still see the light peeking through. We said, isn't that fascinating that we've trained ourselves to see this even in that? And then we got to practice expressing our gratitude during and in the challenge, right? One of the things that Dr. Paul had taught us, and he really strongly encourages, it's not just expressing gratitude for these obvious given gifts. Right? I think C.S. Lewis calls it the given gifts. It's easy to be grateful for just the things that kind of come to us, but take time and express gratitude for the hard stuff.
Mm.
And in the hard
Right.
stuff. So,
So, can you tell us, because that was going to be one of my questions today. Could you share with us an example? Because I think that's the hardest thing to do is when you're in the pit and in the darkness, as you said. When you are in that darkness and in this particular situation, could you give us an example of how you were able to be grateful specifically for the situation and not on the other side when things had settled and the dust had settled, but were you able to see anything in the exact situation or in reference to the situation that you were grateful for at the time? So, not just the sunset or your wife or your children, but what was it about the actual situation that was unfolding in front of you that you could say, thank you for this? Thank you for this experience. Were you able to do that?
well, most of my capacity to do that was kind of um, after the fact, looking in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And so it's easier for me to do it that way because in the midst of pain, sometimes it's hard to say, well, I am grateful for this, right? And so I have a lot of empathy for somebody who is in the middle of experiencing something. I've experienced only my version, right?
Fair.
And so many people have gone through something so much deeper. In fact, just today, it breaks my heart. I got a text from a friend of mine for the obituary of her 24-year-old son.
Mm.
And my heart aches for what she's experiencing right now.
Oh, just got the chills on that one.
And
Mm.
and I think, what must she be going through that I I've never had to go through that? What, I was uncomfortable because I was making a career change, right? However, the experience I had was challenging for me at the moment, right? Um, so one of the tools that Dr. Paul had kind of talked and trained my wife in um, was, we're constantly, without even noticing it, in this evaluation mode. We're always judging. We're always judging our circumstances, and everybody's judging all the time. And I'm judging, oh, well, it's cold, or this hurts, or this is the worst thing ever. Well, compared to what? And so I'm evaluating every given experience and moment and emotion at any given time against something else. And so it's the intentional practice of, well, what am I going to choose to evaluate this against? Right. And so I think this is an opportunity to practice, to shift. And what he identifies is, if I am feeling, an uncomfortable emotion or actual pain or heartbreak or despair, or, something difficult, um, I could say this is the worst thing ever. Well, because I'm comparing it to something that is better and more comfortable and more beautiful than this. But if I imagine, wow, like, I, I'm changing jobs. Okay. But I have a home and a wife and a family and legs and feet. I can walk, I can move, I can talk, I can speak, I can feel, I can love. It's like, I have all of this, right? And so it's comparing it, well, my life could be so much more difficult than it is, right? And so if I can shift my comparative lens of, rather than comparing it against something that's, quote, perceived to be better, well, then I feel like I'm less than, and I'm, oh, woe is me, But if I can compare it the other direction, what that does is that opens my capacity to create and actually move, instead of paralyzed in this um, victimhood mindset, right? And so I believe I had been given training in that, through the 10 years prior, in experiencing that. So that helped me as I went through any number of difficult situations.
Mm. I love that comparison that you use in this, in the lens and how you changed it. And, I've been doing a lot of research on this myself, so I can come from the same place and space in my own life. And I had a moment in there when you were sharing that story where I went, what a beautiful opportunity to be grateful for exactly that learning that you had. The fact that in that moment you could change your mindset, in the moment you could see the good that was in your life, in the moment that, yes, you were losing a partnership and you were certainly struggling with the situation and you were going to have to change jobs and literally the tract of your life and the way that it was going at that moment. But what a beautiful expression to be able to shift and change and look at it all through a different lens. And right there, I went, wow, that's what I'd be grateful for. That would be the gratitude right there, that yes, I'm standing in this mess, but in this moment, I can be grateful for all the other things as well in my life. And I think that, do you feel that the 10 years that you did before and the practices that have been layered, do you feel that strengthened that muscle for you? That ability to create a shift, that ability, we talk about the neural pathways in our brain, and science tells us that we can strengthen those and or we can create brand new ones, no matter what age you're at or what stage of brain development. Do you feel you actually trained your brain and created some new pathways so that instead of the, I can't do this, I'm stuck, this is terrible, the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life, instead you were able to look in a different view? Do you feel that these practices have helped you with that?
Oh, absolutely. I have no question about that. I mean, it's my subjective experience, but I
Yeah,
read other
that's
accounts,
okay.
and I mean, from anecdotal to studies on the idea of intentionally creating these habits, yes, it creates different pathways. You know, what you appreciate appreciates, right? And so if I'm training myself to appreciate, then those things then seem to grow bigger,
Mm.
right? That's where I'm spending my energy. That's um, the everything's a daily habit, I believe, right? And it's not just that I am, and maybe some people have a disposition to just have more positivity and gratitude inherent in their personality. That's a reality, right?
Or
Um,
potentially they learned it from their parents, right? We all would
correct,
have
right?
had to have learned that at some stage in our life. Maybe they had a teacher in public school. Like somewhere along the
Mhm.
line, you were taught that, I think, too. An
Yeah.
example of it showed up for you in
Yep,
your
and we
world.
accumulate that along the way, and however that's
Mm.
that's created, whatever's kind of inherent in our character and what's learned along the way and intentionally practiced. But for me, just the daily choice, right, to
Mm.
choose to see that. A podcast guest I had that I often repeat. His name was Al Switzler, and I mean he was the author of with co-authors of many books. One of them was Crucial Conversations, and you know some of these books, but he said to me that you get what you see and you see what you seek, right? And so if I'm seeking opportunities for gratitude and goodness, that's what I will see, right? And so what am I seeking? And so I think practicing, every day, because at first it wasn't that, at first it was really easy. It's like, oh, I'm grateful for chocolate chip cookies. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my daughter. I'm grateful. Like these are so obvious. But then after a while, I didn't always want to repeat it. And so I would have to dig a little deeper, right?
You have to
And uncover.
actively
And
look
so
for
so
things in
that
your day.
work, yeah, and
Mm.
then and part of the challenge for me was I want to find something else, and so I was looking deeper, and because I was consciously digging, then I would just notice things throughout my day. I believe that life challenge was always there waiting for me, but I changed as I navigated through it. My challenges didn't stop, right? And they won't. I'm still going to go through life. I'm going to face something new, but am I improving my capacity to walk through that with a different mindset that I'm like, okay, instead of asking myself, oh, how is this happening to me? Or why is this happening to me? There's the question. Replace why is this happening to me with how is this happening for me?
Mm. Amen. Right. I hear so much of this, and in your stories, that even the things that keep coming to you, they were for you. Because along the way you got to grow and expand and nurture, to me, what I already see as a beautiful version of yourself, and a beautiful version of a relationship within your marriage, which we know these days it's a 50-50 shot about you've got of staying and having a good strong marriage. And I can hear that you and your wife consciously and purposefully and intentionally chose that path for yourselves. So, a couple of questions in this because there's so much goodness. So thank you so much. My first question would be is do you now find it easier? Do you find the challenges and the harder parts of your life that come up, whether it's struggles, it's emotional roller coasters, we all have good days and bad days. Do you find it's easier to come out on the other side of whatever that downturn may be? Is the dip a little less dippy and the coming up on the other side a little easier?
I don't know if I would say it's easier. I think I would say that I just am gaining a trust in the process
Mm,
because I'm still going through the
right.
challenge and the challenge still hurts. For example, I mean I'm a cyclist. I like to ride a lot, and there's certain bike rides I go on, and I really do not enjoy riding on flat roads. That's actually more painful to me. But I live in next to beautiful mountains, and so I ride up these windy canyon roads that are just
Yeah.
gorgeous, and so I like to just get my head down and just climb, right? And it's a meditative experience for me, and but it's hard. It's hard work, and I just
Yeah.
have to go, and there's no way other than just keep pedaling, and you just got to keep grinding until you get to the top of the mountain, right? And that pain is always there every single time I go. But I know that the top is coming. So it's having that
And
faith
you
and hope and
know you can get there. You now know
right.
you're strong enough you can get there.
And I'm
Most days.
learning what it feels like to be on the other side. I'm like, okay, this hurts. I don't know how long the hurt will last, but I do trust that on the other side of this, there will be light, there will be recovery, there will be growth, there will be a new resurrection of a new me, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I'm gaining hope in. And I actually, if there's one thing I would expect, is that the challenges will probably increase, right? Because that's been the pattern of my life is to the um, well, which I think is the beautiful part about it. I mean, Carl Jung talks about things like this. The Joseph Campbell in The Hero's Journey kind of maps all this out, where the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek. Well, I mean, this is where we're facing our fears and where the difficult challenges come. And every one of the greatest stories, you see the hero of that journey stepping into something that's beyond what they imagined was possible. And then they learn through that cave that the real treasure was that they had within them more than they thought they did. And they came out of it a new version of themselves. So, why would that be different for me? That's what I've been experiencing in my life. And so I get to continue to have these deaths and resurrections of an old version of me into a new one. And
Beautiful.
sometimes, Jacqueline, that frightens me. And when I say sometimes, I mean kind of all the time.
I'm with you every day.
Um, so, but
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 now
I
you
I
know, but now you know, right? Every time you take that one little step past or over your fear, and I hear this in you that this is almost another layer of your practice that you do in your, whether you're, acknowledging it, but I hear that in your story and through the line of your story is that stepping past that fear or into it or over it and keep climbing, that's one of the practices as well. You're not just not going to go do that ride on Saturday morning because you know it's going to be tough. You're going to go do it because you know you'll get stronger from it. Do you feel
That's
like
true.
that's in your exercise life? But I hear this in your gratitude practice. I hear this in building your marriage. I hear this with working with your children. I'm hearing this now as almost a through line through your story.
Yeah, and I'll highlight too that I would say that I've generally been on and off consistent with this type of gratitude practice through the past, 10, 15 years. But it's not been, I can't tell you, Jacqueline, that I haven't missed a day in 10,000 days. That's not my experience, right?
Yeah.
And some people have streaks like that. I don't. I feel like I've still continued to maintain some level of intention in that. I'm in the same with my fitness. Sometimes I'm really heavy into this and I'm, getting in all my miles and so on. And I know what it feels like to maintain that and what it feels like to not do that. And so I think that's part of my learning as well. And so, that helps strengthen my stamina and capacity, both emotionally, spiritually, and physically,
Mhm.
um, as I navigate this existence.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's such an important piece for everybody to hear is, it's the same with 365 Give. We talk about giving every day. Well, sometimes, the giving may be as simple as, oh, I always say this to people, what did you do for yourself today as well, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
always have to be giving to others. It can be just what, did you have a bath today? Did you actually get in the shower and take care of your body? Did you brush your teeth before you went to bed? Because all that counts as taking care of ourselves as well. And I could see you that maybe you didn't write in your journal today, but I could see you just out in the world automatically. I think gratitude is not just saying, I'm grateful for my chocolate chip cookies I got to have, or my kids or my wife. It's walking around the world with a sense of awe and wow, look where I am right now. Oh, I'm sitting watching the sunset. I do a meditation walk each night.
Mm.
So I know that I just to take that moment to look around my neighborhood and, I don't come home and write down and say, oh, I'm grateful for the neighborhood that I live in. But in that moment, I know I'm doing it. And it's part of that practice as well. And I could probably see that that's maybe part of your way of just being at this point that maybe, sometimes we're not even aware of that it is on automatic. Do you feel that there was a time in your gratitude practice, or did you and your wife both feel this, that there was a shift when it started to become, instead of just intentional, I'm going to do this today, that it just became automatic for you and your wife, that it became more of just everyday being than, okay, okay, let's do this. Let's sit down. Let's do it.
I felt like that there are some value to getting streaks, and so we both kind of fueled each other and kind of, even though we travel and we go away for the weekend and we're like, okay, we'll pack your journal. And so that was this physical representation to remind us to kind of keep this intentional streak. So that's why I do like the physical journal. I if nothing else, I invite people to just pause and reflect in gratitude, right? You don't have to write things down. I mean, there is some benefits. I mean,
Absolutely.
clearly to translating it from thinking it, feeling it, writing it. I mean, all of the interaction from, the tactile to the thought to the translation into your, the thought process kind of makes it integrate. But even just thinking it. So um, I don't think it took us very long. Like within a few weeks, we both like noticeably felt like, do you feel that? Like it feels different. And we felt more positive and engaged in that gratitude mindset. Um, and then that just encouraged us more. So
Okay, my last question for you today. What's the one question that nobody asks you about gratitude that you would like to share that you wish people talked about a little bit more, or that you'd like to share with the audience? What's the one thing we're missing in this conversation today?
okay, I think I alluded to it, which is how is this happening for me?
Mm,
And I think that's to ask oneself that question because just change the question to yourself of and think about that. If you're listening to this right now, what's the difference in the feeling when I say, why is this happening to me? And change that and to say, how is this happening for me? What feels different about that? One of them is just accepting that outside forces are acting upon you and you have no control over anything. And the other is choosing to see with curiosity, huh, this is happening. In both cases, this is happening, right? Okay, it's happening. But I get to ask, how could this be happening for me? Let me search that. What good is in this for me? How am I growing because of this? I'm feeling pain right now. Oh, well, that pain is a reflection of the love that I have for something. Or, You know, how is this happening for me?
mm. I think that's a great question that we could all take into our journals literally today and ask ourselves that almost on a daily basis when things come up. I love that as the new practice. That might be our next episode at some point soon, is
Well,
is to start that practice with people, because that instantly, as soon as you said that, and I began reflecting on some own experiences in my life, I also landed on gratitude for that too. I landed in the place of, wow, now I can be grateful for this experience because I know it's happening for me. I know the growth and the muscles I'm going to build, the strength personally I'm going to build, the inner power that I'm going to get from this experience in my life. And those were, as soon as you were saying this, these are all the things that were coming up for me,
mhm.
which I so deeply appreciate. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, and I would add to that because I think this really cracks open the highest level of what gratitude can be.
Mm.
And because there's many different levels. I mean, someone I know talks about several levels of gratitude where it kind of starts from, ungratefulness up to, social gratitude where you just say please and thank you, to appreciation where you really express appreciation specifically to
Mm.
somebody. But then the highest level of gratitude is this empowering sense of gratitude where
Yes.
I like to define it as, gratitude is the highest form of acceptance of what is. And so if we go back to that question of why is this happening to me or how is this happening for me, in the middle of that, the same experience still happened. You are still in the same place, right? The question changes how we respond to that circumstance. And where we can empower ourselves is by, through gratitude, accepting exactly what it is without expectation. We can just have full acceptance, right? And that acceptance of, and I might not know exactly how this is for me yet, but I accept this experience, right? And it is so liberating. I tell people too that gratitude is free. It's free. You get to choose it. All it takes is your conscious choice to choose gratitude. But it's not just free, but it's freeing because it liberates you from the chains of resentment and entitlement, right? And opens up the ability for acceptance of what is. So,
Mhm. Before we go, I want to go back. I want people to hear how many times, and I think this is something that we can remind everybody today is even though being human, we're all in very different circumstances in our life, depending on where you live in the world, so many different things in all of our lives. But the one thing that you kept saying is choice.
mm,
There are so many things we do have choice over. And I believe as human in this human experience that we are in is it's the gift we are given. Free will and choice. And we can choose, and whether that's going to the fridge and choosing a Coke versus a cold glass of water, it's the
hmm
difference between going and doing exercise and not doing exercise. There is choice and free will in everything we choose. And even on the days that feel really hard, most of all, it's that choice that we have on how we view and experience our life. And you've expressed so much of that today. So I want everybody today to go and look at those choices that you do have in your life. Don't limit yourself. And you talked about this again right at the very beginning. It's not the can'ts, but the cans. What can I do? What can I choose? What choices do I have free will to make for myself and how I experience and view the world in the moments of the day? Randy, thank you for being with us today. Could you tell everyone, and we are going to have it below, can you tell everyone where they can find you? Because it's in lots of places, but I'd like you to share it. We are going to put it in all of his links below in here as well. Randy, where can people come and find you and learn more from you and your wife?
yeah, well, we're all over all the socials, but sparksofgratitude.com on YouTube, Instagram,
Beautiful.
everywhere. Just at Sparks of Gratitude. You'll find it.
Perfect.
Check it out. I hope you will. I would be extremely grateful if you join, subscribe, listen to things. We had, Jacqueline will have her on the podcast coming up soon too. So,
It's our podcast swap. We were both excited about it
yeah.
because, and it's what I love is, you and I talk about the same things. It's these practices in our life that really help us have a beautiful life that we get to choose and create right in front of us, no matter what our circumstances are. And thank you for that gift. We're moving into Thanksgiving, so I think this podcast is perfect. Moving into a season where the holidays are coming up, times can be difficult. People feel alone, people feel by themselves, but we all have that opportunity to be grateful right where we are and to find those moments and times that we can look out into the world. Doesn't matter to me if it's a tree in your backyard, it's a bird singing, it's maybe the cat that sits on your lap or your best friend, or the ability just to listen to a podcast about gratitude, because that gives us the ability to choose to change our own mind. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Everyone, thank you for joining us here on the Human Impact Theory podcast. We're excited to have you here. Please remember the one way you can support 365 Give. We are a charitable organization. Just subscribe and share this with one person today. That's all what we always say is when you share the good in this world, that good ripples. And this today, my friend, was a beautiful podcast. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, everyone.